I got home before sunset because a supplier meeting in Fort Collins ended 2 hours early. That almost never happened. For 23 years, my life had moved on schedules, freight windows, production runs, and weather reports. My company made custom outdoor gear, and late nights were normal for me. Claire used to joke that she could set a watch by my headlights pulling into the driveway. That night, the house was dark. Not completely dark. The porch light was on, and the lamp in the front room threw a warm square across the curtains, but the place felt wrong. Empty in a way a home shouldn't feel after 22 years of marriage. I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door and stood there for a second, listening. No music. No television. No Claire in the kitchen pretending to cook while scrolling through her phone. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the old floor vent ticking warm air into the hall. I remember loosening my tie and thinking maybe she'd gone to dinner with a friend and forgotten to text me. That would have been strange, but not alarming. Claire had been distant for months in ways that were easy to explain if I wanted to be lazy about it. She was tired, restless, irritated by little things. I told myself that was what long marriages looked like sometimes. People got older. Quiet settled in. Life flattened at the edges. I even poured myself a glass of water and opened my laptop at the kitchen island. At 9:17, I heard tires on the gravel. I looked through the front window and saw Claire's SUV roll in with the headlights off for the last few feet, like she didn't want attention. That detail lodged itself in my head immediately. When she stepped out, she didn't look surprised to be late. She looked annoyed to be seen. Her hair was wind-tossed, lipstick faded, blouse half untucked on one side like she'd fixed it in a hurry. She came through the door holding her purse tight against her ribs, then stopped when she saw me standing there. For 1 second, we just looked at each other. Then she exhaled through her nose and said, "Why are you home?" Not "you're early." Not "I didn't know you were back." Just that. Sharp. Defensive. Like I'd interrupted something. I set the water glass down carefully. Meeting ended early. She kicked off her heels and glanced past me toward the kitchen, as if checking whether I'd noticed more than I had. I was out. I can see that. Something hard moved behind her eyes. Not guilt. Not panic. Irritation. Like my being there had complicated her evening. And standing in that quiet house, with her blouse wrinkled and her face set cold, I felt the first clean crack run straight through the life I thought was solid. Claire set her purse on the counter a little too fast, like she wanted both hands free if this turned into a fight. I noticed everything then. The smell of perfume that wasn't the one she wore to church or dinners with friends. The faint crease near her collar like someone's hand had been there. The way she kept her body angled not toward me, but toward the hallway. I stayed where I was. Out where? She gave a small shrug and opened the fridge. With Natalie. It came too quickly. No pause. No searching for details. Just a name dropped like a shield. Natalie from Pilates? I asked. Claire pulled out a bottle of sparkling water and frowned at it as if the label required concentration. Yes, Ethan. Natalie. Do I need to submit an itinerary now? I watched her twist the cap. Her fingers were steady, but her jaw wasn't. You didn't mention you were going out. I didn't know I needed permission. The kitchen light was bright enough to make everything feel exposed. The granite counters. The mail stacked in a neat pile. The framed photo from our anniversary trip to Telluride. In that picture, Claire had her head on my shoulder, smiling into the mountain wind like we still knew exactly who we were to each other. I looked at that photo, then back at the woman standing in front of me, and the distance between those two versions of her felt impossible to measure. I didn't say permission, I said. I asked where you were. She took a sip, then laughed once under her breath. Not amused. Mean. This is exactly what I'm talking about. What are you talking about? You always do this. I walk in the door, and suddenly, I'm being interrogated. Interrogated. The word hung there, ugly and deliberate. She wanted the conversation moved off her, and onto me. I could see it happening in real time. She was building a new version of the night, one where I was the problem simply because I had eyes and had used them. You came home after 9, I said. You didn't answer your phone. My phone was in my purse. I called twice. And I was out, she snapped, finally looking at me. Do you hear yourself? You're acting like I committed a crime. I let the silence sit. Claire had always hated silence. It forced her to fill space, and people usually tell the truth right before they can't stand quiet anymore. Instead, she crossed her arms. Honestly, Ethan, this is why I don't tell you things. You make everything tense. Everything turns into control with you. That landed exactly where she meant it to. A clean blade, turned with practice. I felt the anger come up slow, not hot, controlled, useful. So that's what this is? Control? Yes. She didn't hesitate. You track everything.
My time.
My mood. Who I talk to. It's exhausting. It was such a polished lie that for half a second, I could almost admire it. Then I looked at her smeared lipstick, at the irritation in her face, at the way she still hadn't once asked how my day was, and I understood something cold and final. She wasn't afraid of being caught. She was offended that I had made catching her inconvenient. I didn't raise my voice. That seemed to bother her more than anything else. Okay, I said, leaning back slightly against the counter. Then let's make this simple. Look at me and tell me you were with Natalie. Claire rolled her eyes, but she didn't look at me. She took another sip of water, slower this time, buying seconds. I already told you where I was. That's not what I asked. Her shoulders stiffened. For a moment, I thought she might double down, push harder, escalate until the conversation collapsed into noise. That's what she used to do years ago. Overwhelm, redirect, win by exhaustion. But something had changed. She exhaled sharply and set the bottle down. God, Ethan, why are you doing this? Doing what? Dragging this out like it matters. That was the first real crack. Not denial. Not anger. Indifference. I watched her carefully. It matters to me. She laughed again. But this time there was no edge. Just dismissal. Of course it does. There was a long pause. The kind that stretches just enough for truth to decide whether it's coming out or not. Then she finally looked at me, and I saw it. Not guilt. Not fear. Relief. Fine, she said quietly. You want the truth? I wasn't with Natalie. I didn't move. There's someone else, she continued, almost casually, like she was admitting to changing hair salons. His name is Tyler. The name sat in the air between us, unfamiliar and immediately heavy. Tyler, I repeated. She nodded. He's a photographer. We met a few months ago. A few months. I let that settle. Counted it backward in my head. Holidays. Birthdays. Quiet dinners where she'd seemed distracted. Nights she'd gone to bed early. Mornings she'd barely spoken. How old is he? I asked. She hesitated, just a fraction. 30. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it confirmed everything I needed to know about the shape of this. And he understands you, I said. That got her attention. Her chin lifted slightly. Yes. He does. No shame. No attempt to soften it. Just a clean, unapologetic answer. In ways you don't, she added. There it was. Not just the affair. The justification. I studied her face, memorizing it in that moment. The calm certainty. The quiet arrogance. She had already rewritten our marriage in her head. Turned it into something lacking, so she could step outside it without feeling like the villain. How long? I asked. I told you. A few months. That's not what I mean. She held my gaze this time. Long enough. The house felt different now. Smaller. Like the walls had shifted inward without warning. And you were going to tell me? I asked. She shrugged. Eventually. As if honesty was something she could schedule around convenience. I nodded slowly, absorbing it all. The timeline. The tone. The complete absence of regret. And in that moment, I understood something with absolute clarity. This hadn't just happened. She had chosen it. Over and over again. And she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I expected something to break inside me. Anger. Shock. Maybe even the urge to argue. to force her to feel something she clearly didn't. That would have been the normal reaction, the predictable one. But none of that came. Instead, everything went quiet. Not the house. Not the moment.
Just me.
I looked at Claire, really looked this time, without the filter of habit or history, and saw someone I didn't recognize. Or maybe someone I had been refusing to recognize for years. You said he understands you, I said. She crossed her arms again, settling into herself now that the truth was out. He listens. He actually sees me. I nodded slowly. And I don't. She didn't answer right away. That was the closest thing to hesitation she'd shown all night. Then she gave a small shrug. Not anymore. Not anymore. That phrasing mattered. It gave her an out. A way to pretend this was a recent failure instead of something she had been building toward piece by piece. I thought about the last few years. The quiet dinners. The way she stopped asking about the business. The way conversations had turned into logistics, groceries, schedules, bills. I remembered the nights I stayed late at the workshop, telling myself I was doing it for us. Maybe I had been, but she hadn't been there for a long time. And now she was standing in front of me, telling me someone else had taken that place, and expecting me to react like it was just another argument we'd get past. I pushed away from the counter and straightened my sleeves. Small movements. Controlled. Deliberate. What do you want, Claire? I asked. She frowned slightly, like the question annoyed her. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. I don't know. I needed something different. Something real again. Real. I almost asked her what that word meant to her, but it didn't matter anymore. Because I understood something she didn't. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a phase. This was a decision she had already made. And the only thing left was whether I was going to stand there and let her define the rest of my life with it. I picked up my glass, took a slow sip, and set it back down. Okay, I said. She blinked. Okay, what? Okay, I repeated. I hear you. There was a shift in her posture. Subtle but there. She had expected resistance. Questions. Maybe even desperation. Not this. You're not going to say anything else? She asked. I am, I said calmly. Just not tonight. Her eyes narrowed slightly, trying to read something I wasn't giving her. So, what, you're just fine with this? I held her gaze, steady and even. No. I'm just clear. That word landed differently. For the first time since she walked in, I saw something flicker across her face that wasn't control. Uncertainty. I turned off the kitchen light and headed toward the hallway. Behind me, she called out, Ethan, don't do that. Don't shut down like this. I didn't stop, because I wasn't shutting down. I was stepping back. And somewhere in that quiet, controlled distance, a decision had already been made. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. That wasn't unusual for me. What was unusual was how clear my head felt. No racing thoughts. No replaying the conversation. Just a steady, quiet focus, like the kind I had during long builds in the workshop when everything else fell away. Claire was still asleep. She had turned her back to me at some point during the night, the distance between us measured in inches, but feeling like something permanent. I got out of bed without making a sound, dressed in the dark, and left the house before she woke up. By 6:15, I was sitting in my office. The building smelled like wood, resin, and cold air. Familiar. Grounded. This place had been mine long before Claire and I got married. Back when it was just a rented space, a few tools, and a stack of orders I wasn't sure I could fill on time. I ran my hand along the edge of the main workbench, feeling the grooves worn into it over the years. Every mark had a story. Every cut had a reason. Unlike what waited at home. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. No hesitation. The first thing I did was pull up our financial accounts. Joint checking. Savings. Business operating accounts. Nothing looked immediately wrong, but I wasn't looking for obvious mistakes. I was looking for patterns. Small movements. Transfers. Changes that didn't match how we usually handled things. There were a few. Nothing dramatic. A couple of larger-than-usual withdrawals over the past 3 months. Payments I didn't recognize right away. I made a note of each one, not reacting, just recording. Then I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. Premarital. I almost forgot it existed. Back when Claire and I got engaged, my accountant at the time had pushed me hard to protect the business. Said it was standard. Said it didn't mean I didn't trust her, just that I understood what I had built. Claire had signed it without much discussion. At the time, it felt like a formality. Now it felt like something else. I read through it line by line, slower than necessary. Ownership clauses, asset protections, language about growth and valuation tied specifically to premarital holdings. By the time I finished, I leaned back in my chair and let out a quiet breath. That was still intact. And it changed everything. At 8:02, I made a call. Law office of Daniel Reeves. Daniel, I said when he picked up. It's Ethan Walker. A pause. Then recognition. Ethan. It's been a while. It has, I said. I need to go over something carefully. He didn't ask questions right away. That's why I called him. Come in today, he said. Bring whatever you have. I will. I ended the call and looked around my office. Same walls, same tools, same company I had spent decades building piece by piece. But now there was something else layered over it. Clarity. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about control. And I wasn't going to lose what was mine because someone else decided the rules didn't apply to them anymore. I didn't go home that night until after 9. Not to avoid Claire. Just to avoid unnecessary conversation before I had everything in place. When I walked in, she was on the couch, legs tucked under her, scrolling through her phone like nothing had shifted. She glanced up at me, measuring, waiting for something. I gave her nothing. Long day, she asked. Yes. That was it. No tension. No follow-up. I moved through the house like I always did, set my keys down, poured a glass of water, checked a few emails on my phone. Normal. Predictable. Controlled. She watched me the entire time. I could feel it without looking. That uncertainty from the night before hadn't gone away. It had grown. She didn't understand what I was doing, and that was starting to bother her more than any argument would have. Good. Around 10:30, I went to my office at home and closed the door. Not locked. Just closed. That was when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something about the timing made me pick it up. Ethan Walker, I said. There was a pause. Then a woman's voice, hesitant but steady underneath. Hi, this might sound strange. My name is Megan. I work for you. I straightened slightly in my chair. Megan. Yeah. I'm in inventory and logistics. I started about 8 months ago. I knew the name. Quiet. Efficient. The kind of employee who didn't create problems, which is why I remembered her. What can I do for you? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. Then she said, I don't think your wife is just having an affair. The room went completely still. I didn't interrupt. I didn't want to get involved, she continued quickly. I really didn't. But I've seen things, and after tonight, I figured you might already know something. Seen what? I asked, calm, even. Papers rustled faintly on her end, like she had notes in front of her. There have been inventory adjustments, she said. Small at first. Items marked as damaged or written off. But they weren't damaged. My eyes moved slowly to the file I had open on my desk. The notes I'd made that morning. Go on, I said. And there's a guy who's been coming around, she added. Not officially. Not logged. He doesn't sign in, but I've seen him in the back storage area more than once. Claire let him in. Tyler. I didn't say the name. I didn't think much of it at first, Megan said. But then I overheard them. Not everything. Just pieces. Enough to make it wrong. What pieces? I asked. Her voice dropped slightly. They were talking about numbers. About making the business look weaker than it is. Losses. Inventory gaps. Stuff that would show up if someone audited things later. I leaned back slowly, my grip tightening just enough on the edge of the desk to feel it. And why would they want that? I asked. Another pause. When she answered, there was no hesitation. Because in a divorce, it changes what you're worth. I didn't react right away. That's a serious claim, I said, keeping my voice level. I know, Megan replied. That's why I waited. I wanted to be sure. Are you? Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. I stood up slowly and walked to the window, looking out into the dark street. The reflection staring back at me looked exactly the same as it had yesterday. But everything behind it had shifted. What exactly had they been doing? I asked. Megan exhaled quietly, like she'd been holding this in for too long. Claire has been signing off on inventory write-offs that don't make sense. High-value gear. Custom builds. Stuff that doesn't just go missing. My jaw tightened slightly. How much? At first, a few thousand. Then it started stacking. I checked the last quarter. It's a lot, Ethan. I didn't ask her to define a lot. I already understood. And Tyler? I said. He's involved, she answered. I saw him photographing items in the warehouse. Not for marketing. There were no product tags, no lighting setup. Just quick shots. Like documentation. Documentation. Evidence of removal. Where are those items now? I asked. Gone, she said. Marked as defective or unsellable. But I never processed them for disposal. They just disappeared. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the pattern lock into place. Claire wasn't just cheating. She was preparing an exit. And the conversations you overheard? I asked. Megan didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was quieter. They talked about positioning, she said. About making it look like the business has been struggling for a while. So when things come out, it doesn't seem suspicious. I let out a slow breath. And me? I asked. There was another pause. They mentioned you, she said. Claire said you've been emotionally absent. That you've been checked out for years. Tyler told her that would help if things got legal. That it builds a narrative. Of course it does. I rested my hand against the glass, cold under my palm. So the plan, I said slowly, is to drain assets, lower visible value, and frame me as the reason everything declined. Yes. Simple. Clean. Calculated. I opened my eyes. And you're telling me this why? Her answer came faster than anything else she'd said. Because it's wrong. No performance. No hesitation. Just that. I respected that. Do you have proof? I asked. Yes, she said. I've been saving everything I could without being obvious. Logs. Copies of adjustments. Security timestamps. I even pulled partial footage from the back entrance cameras before it got overwritten. That made me pause. You've been planning this, I said. I've been watching, she corrected quietly. And waiting until I knew who to trust. I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see it. All right, I said. Here's what we're going to do. For the first time since she called, she went completely silent. Not unsure. Focused. And in that silence, something shifted again. Because this wasn't just damage control anymore. This was a game. And now I knew the rules. I didn't confront her the next day. Or the day after. For 2 weeks, I said nothing. Claire noticed. At first, she tested it. Small things. Sitting closer on the couch. Asking about my day with a softness that hadn't been there in months. Cooking dinner one night, something she hadn't done in a long time. Thought we could eat together, she said, placing the plate in front of me. I looked at it. Steak. Slightly overcooked. Thanks, I said. No questions. No reaction. That unsettled her more than anything else. Because she didn't know what I knew. During those 2 weeks, everything moved quietly. Megan transferred files in small batches. Logs, timestamps, internal adjustments. I met Daniel twice, then 3 times. We mapped everything out, asset trails, discrepancies, legal angles. The premarital agreement held strong. Stronger than Claire had probably assumed. And the inventory fraud? That turned things from complicated to decisive. On the 15th day, Claire made her move. She came into the kitchen early in the evening, dressed differently. Softer. Familiar. The version of her that used to work when she wanted something. Can we talk? She asked. I set my glass down. We can. She sat across from me, hands folded like she'd rehearsed this. I've been thinking, she began, about us. I didn't interrupt. I know things have been distant, she said carefully. And I made mistakes. Mistakes. I watched her closely. The tone. The pacing. This wasn't guilt. This was strategy. I think we rushed into conclusions, she continued. And maybe we owe it to ourselves to try and fix this before doing anything drastic. Drastic. Like she hadn't already crossed every line that mattered. I nodded once. Fix it how? She leaned forward slightly. We take a step back. Spend time together. Maybe even see someone. Just reset. Reset. Like none of it had happened. Like Tyler didn't exist. Like the missing inventory was an accounting error. I let the silence stretch. Then I reached into the folder beside me. Her eyes dropped to it instantly. Small movement, but sharp. I opened it slowly and turned it toward her. Before we talk about fixing anything, I said calmly, we should probably go over this. She frowned. What is that? Inventory reports, I said. Adjusted over the last 3 months. She didn't touch the papers. Didn't even blink. But I saw it. That flicker again. This time, it wasn't uncertainty. It was recognition. I don't know what you're implying, she said carefully. I'm not implying anything, I replied. I'm showing you patterns. I slid another page forward. Missing custom units. Marked defective. Never processed. Another page. Unauthorized access logs. Late entries. Back storage. And then I said his name for the first time. Tyler. That landed. Her posture broke, just slightly. Ethan. I raised my hand. Not aggressive. Just enough to stop her. I'm not finished. Silence. Heavy. Controlled. I leaned back in my chair. You said you wanted to fix things. I continued. That we should reset. I held her eyes. So, let's be clear about what we're resetting from. For the first time since that night, she had no script. No redirect. No accusation ready. Just the slow realization that whatever control she thought she had was gone. Claire didn't speak for a long time. Her eyes moved across the papers without actually reading them. I could see it in the way her focus drifted. She wasn't processing details. She was recalculating, looking for a way out. This doesn't prove anything, she said finally, but her voice had lost that sharp edge. It sounded thinner now, controlled in a different way. It doesn't need to, I replied. It just needs to be consistent. I reached into the folder again and placed a small USB drive on top of the papers. And that, she asked. Security footage, I said. Time-stamped entries. Back storage. Multiple dates. Her fingers twitched slightly on the table. And before you ask, I continued. Yes, there are clear images. Silence again. Then she leaned back, crossing her arms like before. But this time it wasn't confidence. It was defense. You've been spying on me, she said. I almost nodded at how predictable that was. No, I said. I've been paying attention. Her jaw tightened. This is insane. What's insane, I said calmly, is thinking this wouldn't surface. That landed harder than anything else, because now she understood something critical. This wasn't a confrontation. It was a position. And what exactly do you want, Ethan? She asked, her tone shifting again, less aggressive, more careful. Negotiation. There's already paperwork in motion, I said. You'll be served this week. That hit. Her eyes widened just enough to break through the control. You filed already? Yes. You didn't even try to. Fix it. I finished for her. You already decided what this was. Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. For the first time in 22 years, Claire had nothing to say. I let that sit. Then I slid one final document across the table. This is a summary, I said, of what happens next. She hesitated before picking it up. I watched her read. Not every line. Just enough. The premarital agreement. The business ownership. The asset protection clauses. And then the last section. Fraud. Her breathing changed. Subtle. Faster. This is excessive, she said quietly. No, I replied. This is accurate. She looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked uncertain of herself. Tyler told you this would be easy, didn't he? I asked. That hit deeper than anything else, because now I wasn't just ahead of her. I was inside the plan. Her plan. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. I stood up, slow and steady. My lawyers will handle everything from here, I said. You should get your own. Ethan, she started, but her voice caught slightly. I paused, but I didn't turn back. Be smart about what you do next, I added, because right now this ends clean. That was the closest thing to mercy I was offering. Behind me, I heard the paper shift in her hands. And nothing else. No anger. No accusations. No control. Just the quiet sound of someone realizing the game they thought they were playing was already over. The divorce didn't drag. That surprised a lot of people. Not me. Claire hired an attorney within days. A good one, from what Daniel told me. Expensive. Aggressive. The kind that builds pressure early and tries to force concessions before everything is fully on the table. It didn't work, because everything was already on the table. The first round of negotiations was quiet, formal, controlled, just documents moving back and forth, requests, disclosures, standard process. Then her side made a move. They tried to question the valuation of the business, claimed instability, referenced declining inventory and operational inconsistencies. Exactly what they had planned. Daniel didn't react emotionally. He just nodded once and said, "We'll respond." And we did. Not with arguments. With evidence. Logs. Adjustments. Security footage. Timestamps. Internal records tied directly to Claire's approvals. And then the pattern, laid out clean, chronological, impossible to explain away as coincidence. I was in the room when it was presented. Claire didn't look at me. Not once. Her attorney went through the documents, slower and slower as he realized what he was looking at. I watched the moment it clicked for him, the shift from strategy to damage control. He leaned toward her, whispering something tight and urgent. Claire's face didn't collapse, but it changed. The confidence was gone. The calculation was gone. All that was left was someone who understood, finally, that there was no version of this where she came out ahead. The next offer they sent was different. Smaller. Cleaner. No attempt to touch the business. No aggressive claims. Just an exit. She kept the house. A portion of shared savings. Nothing more. Daniel looked at me. We can push further. I shook my head. No. This wasn't about taking everything. It was about ending it. 3 weeks later, it was done. No court. No spectacle. Just signatures. Claire moved out before the final papers were even processed. I came home one evening, and half the house was empty. Closets cleared. Drawers clean. The silence felt different now. Not hollow. Clear. I stood in the living room for a while, looking at the space where things used to be. 22 years reduced to what she could fit into boxes and a moving truck. And I felt nothing heavy. Just stillness. Months passed. The business grew. Stronger than before. Cleaner. Focused. Whatever damage they tried to create had been contained before it spread. New contracts came in. Bigger ones. I expanded the workshop, hired more people, trusted differently this time. Carefully. Megan got a promotion. She didn't ask for it. She earned it. As for Claire, I heard things. Not directly. People talk. Tyler didn't last. That didn't surprise me. Whatever he thought he was stepping into, it wasn't real. It never was. No business. No leverage. No version of her life that matched the story she had built in her head. One evening, late, I sat outside with a glass of bourbon, watching the sun drop behind the mountains. The air was cold. Clean. For the first time in a long time, there was no noise in my head. No second-guessing. No unfinished conversations. Just quiet. I thought about that night. The way she walked in. The irritation in her voice. "How are you home?" Like I had broken something by being there. I took a slow sip and set the glass down. She was right. Something did break that night. But it wasn't my life. It was the illusion of it. And losing that was the only reason I finally got everything else back.